Hello and welcome back to another episode of Polar Opposites. Joining us again is Annie Agin, Eric Lilstrom, and Keith Heger. And today we're going to be talking about our favorite gear modifications and the factors that make our expeditions a little bit trickier than everyone else's. We'll touch more on that in just a minute here, but who wants to jump in first with their favorite gear modification?
I think Eric does.
Go for it, Eric.
By far, my favorite gear modification is putting a lighter, like just a regular big lighter, on a lanyard around your neck. You can just take a small piece of string, kind of like on a compass, and duct tape your lighter to it, and you keep it right underneath your mid layer, and it keeps the lighter warm and dry whenever you need to use it. Because if you've tried to use a cold lighter before, it can be pretty challenging.
All right, sounds good. What do you do, Hager?
I'll start with the most basic one first. Different colored cords for all of my different layered zipper pulls, right? So I know that the red one is my innermost layer, and I know that the black one is my mid layer, and I know the white one is my jacket.
That sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good.
Some of us can just tell by the fabric of the piece itself, and we don't have to color code. But I mean,
I will say that I have gone to longer lengths on the innermost ones because they need the longest length to come out. So
yeah, that is clutch.
Something I can get my gloved hand on and zip up.
But your gloved hand doesn't know what color that zipper.
No, I can look down and see it and know it. But as far as feel goes.
Okay, so you almost need zipper pulls that are made of like different diameter cord.
I like that.
Do you ever get your zipper pulls caught in your other zippers?
Oh, that's the worst. Then you don't know what's going on.
But jumping off of Annie's question, is there any tactile difference between your zipper pulls?
No, just the length.
Okay. So that won't work for someone who is colorblind, huh?
Yeah.
Or someone who's just got, their hood up, their face mask is crunchy because it's so frozen. You can't look down, and you're trying to get into your pocket, and you're not going to be looking down because the second down, your goggles are going to freeze up. We're going to be talking about that in the next section, which are things that can make any day seem a lot harder. But I get that. I get differentiating your zipper pulls. I kind of like that one.
What do you do, Annie? What's your number one gear mod?
My number one gear mod has to do with my poles, and I have a pole here for demonstration purposes. When you're skiing, you're holding onto your poles, and if it's really cold out and you're holding onto your poles tight, as some do, especially people who are maybe less comfortable on skis, or maybe it's a whiteout and you're not really sure which way is up or what you're skiing over. It's really easy to hold on to those poles really tight. And if you're doing that all day, first of all, your hands are going to be exhausted, but also your fingers are going to get colder because you're making a really tight bend in all these different knuckles. So what I like to do is I like to pad out the grip of my ski pole with some Ensilad like this. I just make a strip of it about this thick, and I wrap it once or twice around the ski pole, and then I tape it on there, so that I can hold on a nice loose grip. I don't have to hold on tight in order to keep the ski pole in my hand. Of course, the strap helps with that too, but I get a nice loose grip, and then even if I'm holding on tight, my hands are still loose and my knuckles aren't all crimped up. So that's my favorite gear modification that I do on just about any cold weather camping trip. There are some trips that, where you want more control, so you want that tight grip, but on our ski expeditions, usually you don't need that tight control, and so that's my favorite modification. Yeah.
And I'm always looking for more gear mods because my best one is just a little bit of extra duct tape wrapped around a water bottle, so you have it if you need it. But who else has got another good one? Eric, I think you've got another good gear mod.
Oh, another really polar specific gear mod is having cutting out a piece of windproof fleece and either sewing it into the bottom of your goggles or just taping it on, because a lot of times if you're wearing a face mask or a buff over your mouth, it can be really restrictive. And so just having a piece of fabric kind of draped in front doesn't restrict any of your breathing, but it still gives you all the wind protection that you need.
And Eric, do you tape that on?
The first one that I made, I taped on because I didn't have anything to sew it on with at the time, and it was going to be just a temporary thing, but it never fell off, so it's still taped on.
Yeah, taping them on works good. In before the expedition, especially. Once you're out there and it's all cold, then the tape doesn't work so well. I have another pole one that I like, and that is to put a piece of ribbon. Usually put it just a little bit below the grip, and you just attach that on. And if it's nice and light piece of ribbon, one that will easily flow in the wind, it helps you know the wind direction, which can be super useful when you're navigating. Because when we're going pretty much in a straight line, or maybe some slight deviations, it's a lot easier to just tell that you're going the direction you want by knowing which way the wind is coming. Always make sure it's hitting you in the same direction than it is to get out your GPS or your compass and take a look. So having that ribbon on kind of as a telltale of what direction the wind is coming from is really helpful. Nice, thin, light piece of ribbon. And I know all of you guys do that too, right? I know all of you guys do it because it's such a great,
definitely.
We sort of forget that we do it, but it's a really great gear modification.
Absolutely.
Everyone wear Baffin boots here?
Yeah.
Baffin boot, 3 pins.
Are you with those super long laces, right? And the one little pull tab, and then you have like 3 feet. So what I've learned that I modified it. So I cut that in half, and I have an extra pull tab down below against my ankle, and then I have my upper section. So it's like I have 2 laces inside the Baffin boot before I zip it all up.
That's such a great idea, Keith. I don't have that, not because I don't want it. I've just been too lazy to do it. And but every time I put those on, I say to myself, I wish I had a pull tab right down here by my ankle, because it would just make the whole fitting process just so much faster. You don't have to like figure out which cord goes with which to kind of like tighten those laces. You know, that's a good idea. And also to have those be 2 different colors so you can quickly identify which one you want to tighten.
Yeah, that's a great mod, Keith. And in fact, I do that too, and I've just removed the upper lace completely. I only use the lower lace.
I've got one more gear modification that I sometimes do, and that is that depending on which face mask I'm wearing, if I have a face mask that's one of those ones that covers the mouth and then just has some holes in it, which I usually don't have this kind, but cutting those holes out, I've got a larger breathing hole. Otherwise, my respirations freeze on top of that, and I get progressively less and less fresh air. But you have to be really careful when you're cutting that hole, because if you just cut it a bit too much, you're going to have to go back in with tape or something else to modify it. Because I've only gotten frostbite once, and it was when my face mask just froze out of position and, just let a little bit too much cold air reach me in a spot where it shouldn't have. But you got to be careful not to cut that hole too big.
Nice. Good.
What about attaching your spoon to your bowl?
Oh,
I do that. Yeah. A lot of good stuff in that topic, guys. We're going to move on into our second topic, which is what makes your expedition a little bit trickier than everyone else's, or what's something that makes your expedition tricky that doesn't apply to everyone. So I'll get us started on that. I have terrible vision and need to wear glasses or contacts to be able to see anything. So every day I'm putting in contacts in the tent. I'm taking them out before I go to bed. I've got to keep them from freezing overnight. If I'm carrying spare lenses, I've got to make sure those don't freeze. And it's just something extra to manage. If I'm on a dog sled trip, I have to be very, very careful of the cleanliness of my fingers so that when I'm working with my eyes, I don't get an infection or anything. So that takes a little bit of thought and is just something that makes every day a little bit of an extra challenge for me. How about you, Eric?
Well, first of all, I believe that. Absolutely. I've seen, I've tented with people who have contacts, and it's one more step in the morning. It's not necessarily a short one. But I also just want to point out that CP, Chris, has made an excellent video about how he handles his contacts when he's on an expedition. It's in our YouTube channel. So if you go there and you look under the skills the skills review playlist, you can find out how CP manages his contacts when he's on an expedition. It's really good.
For me, I think other than being inconveniently tall for tent life, I think
how tall are you?
Being 6'8", it's a little bit harder to fold up into the vestibule to do my cooking, and I think it's probably even more inconvenient for my tent mates. But finding a long enough sleeping bag and sleeping pad, that's always a challenge. But I think the thing that really challenges me on an expedition most is if I don't manage my feet properly and get blisters, because I'm a total weenie about blisters. If I've got foot pain and I'm just skiing and I'm in my head all day, I can't focus on anything else. So I have a very strict foot care regimen.
I'll second that, Eric, because I've got super flat feet, and so I've got to wear an orthotic that's plastic that really sucks the heat out of my feet. So something I had to get over.
Well, I'm surprised nobody has mentioned yet what makes a day harder, any day for any person, is having their goggles freeze up. And we're all of us are constantly in a search for the best ways to handle goggles freezing up. I have found that if I hold my mouth and pick like O shape but kind of off to the side and blow, I blow like this, like that, then it helps to not get it. But it's of course a big recipe that has to do with the humidity and the wind direction and whether or not you're wearing your ruff. But do you guys have any tips for that horrible dilemma of goggles freezing up?
Yeah, definitely. I struggle with that a lot, especially with all different types of face masks. And what I mentioned earlier, that goggle skirt has helped me so much. It's changed my expedition life because it just directs all of the air down. So you don't have to be like constantly exhaling downward to get that moist air away from your goggles.
Yeah.
For me, I run on the really hot side. And so I was always walking the fine line of overheating and all of that body heat shooting up into my face system. And so it's taken me many miles to figure out what clothes and what work rate I need to maintain in order to keep the goal going, but not overheat. That's something you don't learn on the first day. You have to practice and experiment and know when to dump heat. So that's why those tactile zipper pulls are really essential.
Try to figure a way to direct some of that body heat down to those frosty little piggies on your orthotics.
Yeah, man, like a.
Okay, how about whiteout days for making your day like suddenly so much harder?
Yeah, you gotta step carefully, and I like bringing my arms out a little bit wider when I'm hanging onto my poles and just getting a wider stance for the whole day. Don't want to be that guy who yard sails while standing on totally flat ground because he can't tell which way's up and which way's down.
I think if you're skiing with the team, you might be able to maintain the pace, but you can lose people often. And one of the strategies that I've learned is that if you can get the team to ski next to each other, they have an object to focus in on, and that allows them to, even though they might be going over different terrain, and we always cue in on whoever's in front of us to get over that next obstacle, you'll make up for the loss of speed due to the whiteout if you can have your team focused on each other and skiing with at least something to look at. Because we all know in a whiteout, you have no point of reference. Bring your ski poles wide, widen your stance, and be just generally more athletic with all of your movements.
So you're saying 2x2 instead of single file for your travel?
Yeah, 2x2, and you can do that. Like, not everyone needs to do it. Someone just needs that hand. And then imagine a whiteout with goggles that are fogged up.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it doesn't matter. You know, you're in a whiteout. You're basically blind anyways. Especially if you're out front, you're basically blind. So having your goggles fogged up, you might not even know that your goggles are fogged up because you're just sort of skiing into the unknown. But what I do on those days is I just like consciously take a moment every so often just to like release my shoulders and try to let go of some of that tension. That's when it's really nice to have those big, thick ski pole grips, because those are the days when I'm gripping tighter because you're not really sure what's coming up. So I just every so often I just kind of like do one of these and just try to shake it off. But it builds back up again, and you got to release that tension. But at the end of those days, I'm tight and I'm tired, and I just feel like my eyes have been on like GPS. They're like a GPS trying to acquire a signal from a satellite. It drains your batteries really fast. I feel like my batteries get drained in those whiteout days fast because I'm just like trying to acquire anything at all.
It's a good day for a treat, a little dessert at the end of the day.
It is a great day for a treat.
Do you notice your feet get worse on those days, Eric, where your stability is off and you're maybe working your calves and your knees and ankles more than you normally would?
I don't actually. I think on those days I don't really notice my feet until the end of the day. And just because, whether you're just looking down at your chest mounted compass all day long because there's nothing to look at in front of you, or you're doing like Annie does and just trying constantly to scan and get some sort of contrast. I think at the end of the day, I might find that my feet are a little bit more beat up, but I don't think about it in those situations.
I just have to say, for all the ladies, I want to represent the 50% of the population. Having your period is a real tough thing to have on an expedition for all the reasons that you can imagine. But it takes a lot out of you physically, but it also, like having contacts, adds a lot of things that you have to go through during the day and things that you generally want to do in private, which sometimes you can't. So just for all the ladies out there, kudos to you for being strong and getting through having your period on an expedition. That's tough, and that takes a lot of strength, and we are stronger for that.
I have nothing to say to that. No argument.
Somebody come up with one more thing that makes the next even hard, because we can't end on a period.
That looked like an explanation to me.
Yeah,
you've got one more. Eric, you've got one more. Come on, CP. Come on. Oh, I got a good one.
Go for it.
Sorry, I'm hogging this. Okay, when you're making your water and you dug just a little bit too deep, you dug a little bit too deep into the ice, and you go into your water, you've melted it, and it's briny. It's just a little salty. That's kind of a bummer. Doesn't really make your day. Or worse, when you do that in the morning and at your first break, you're like, ooh, what's up with this water? Okay, come on.
Yeah, that's the worst time to remember to realize it.
I'm totally with you. We've all done it. I've had to dump it out. You're like, well, we'll just start over.
Yes. So CP, I have to ask, who do you think had one of the best gear modifications? Because I want to wrap this up with a winner, because I am a little competitive.
I know this. So let's recap. You've got the pole modifications for your hands and for direction. Eric, you've got the lighter, and what else do you have? The face shield. Okay, that's good. Heger, you have thread. Is that right? You have some pieces.
I have something. I have something, and it's great.
You have something, and it's great.
He's got thread, but remember, it's only a different color. It doesn't have a different texture.
I had the one inside the tent, the little extension on the vestibule. That's a good one.
That's a good one. That's a good one for sure. Well, this is my least favorite part of the day, but I'm going to have to say that Annie wins this one. You get navigation and comfort.
Thank you. And muscle, and
we vote.
Thank you, Eric. I'm back on 10.
Well done, Annie.
Nice job, Annie. I'm not surprised. You are a deep well of polar experience and gear tricks.
Hey, let me just say in my 15 seconds that we would love to hear from anybody who's watching this. Post in the comments which subjects you want us to talk about, because we talk about this stuff all the time. We have a really fun time chatting in this forum, but we want to know those subjects that you want to hear us chatting about. So put that in the comments, and that's my 15 seconds.
Awesome. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.